Driving around this time of year, I see quite a few cemeteries set up in people's yards as they are decorating for Halloween. There have been several movies that featured cemeteries, or so I've been told. I am not brave enough to watch any of them. Since it is the time of year when cemeteries are featured front and center in all things guts and gore, I thought it might make an interesting topic for some writing. Cemeteries? Yes, cemeteries. Graveyards, burial grounds, whatever they may be called. Even though cemeteries may be perceived by some as creepy or macabre, I have a different perspective. To me, there is just something about old cemeteries. Perhaps the fact that I spent a part of my childhood years just a few steps away from one, visited it frequently, and felt quite comfortable there has something to do with my intrigue. After years of reading the names, dates, and stories on the tombstones, I felt intimately connected to those who were buried there. In some ways, the people buried there felt like old friends. Even though I never knew some of them, I still believed I did. I could feel their sorrow. Even now, when I visit that same cemetery, years later, my heart still aches for young lives lost. I linger at the grave of one who was a kind neighbor, who brought me and my sisters into her home, whose dog we loved over, and wonder that I can sit at her grave and at the same time gaze at the very house that holds all those dear memories of her. I remember the farmer who drove his tractor all around town, never without a bottled Coke in his hand, who brought us watermelons and fresh vegetables faithfully from the time they came in season until the season ended. I remember the day he was buried, that cold, drizzly November day, and the mournful sound of the trumpet playing taps. I look at his grave, right next to his 4-year-old child who was hit by a car outside of his house, and marvel at the strength that could survive such a thing. Cemeteries can be very restful places. They can even be inspiring, especially visiting those cemeteries which have years of history behind them. In some cases, walking the grounds can create serenity, as older, established cemeteries may have beautiful trees and plantings with flowers everywhere. Just reading the headstones can stir your heart, as you are privileged to witness the faith and strength of people who have passed on years before, communicated to us in the here and now by just a few simple words. It can be a very moving experience to read what people have chosen to use as their last words, and it makes me ponder what my last words will be. If you have time to linger in a cemetery, you may find yourself thoughtfully considering many things. It's hard not to when surrounded with so many reminders of those who have done something those of us visiting have never done. They have experienced what we haven't, and that alone creates deep contemplation within me. Each cemetery is different, and you never know what you will discover. I see much wildlife in the quieter cemeteries, and it comforts me to know that even in this place of endings, life still goes on. In some places of the country, family cemeteries dot the landscape, a testament to the generations who lived on the same land and breathed the same air for years and years. People who had strong ties to the land of their ancestors, and even though they may have felt the pull to leave, they did not. Who has been to the National Cemetery in Gettysburg or the Arlington National Cemetery and not felt the awesome solemnness in those places? To stand there amongst the pristine white slabs of the unknown soldiers and not feel a stirring in your heart would be almost unthinkable. The stories there, the families left behind, the men who sacrificed all, they are not forgotten. For a cemetery is a record of life, an album of those who have gone before us. All the stones tell a story, and even though the ending is the same, it's in the in-between where all our living here happens. Every time I visit one, I think about my living. For as much as cemeteries exist as a final resting place for those who are no longer with us, I also think they exist for us in the here and now, to consider our lives and the ways we live, so that even though we too will pass on, we will live in such a way to honor the gift of life we have been given and the ones who gave it to us.